Alright, so this is the first test fit prior to final assembly, and I can already tell that those are not going to fit. Let's see what else we got to drill. And one repair on this one. Got to drill that, got to drill that. Either way, yep. So let me do that now. I got to get some different size collets for my Tamiya handy drill here. This is pretty close though. So we got a great fit there on that one. Without too much difficulty. Let's see how these chairs go. Alright, so those fit now. Let's check out all of these guys. I'd like all of these to be interchangeable. So now I can say that all of these fit and they are interchangeable to a large degree. So all of those holes are correct. One thing I had been thinking about going way back is that it appears, and these are only lit up in basically the pilot episode, is that there are 4 separate lights at the bottom here, and each one is flashing at a different sync. I'd like to do that, but 4 LEDs, 6 tubes, 24 LEDs, it's not the count of the LEDs, it's just the wiring of it all. Rather, what I'll simply be doing is, in honor of Forbidden Planet, is doing a single RGB flasher that will take its time. Each one will be slightly out of sync with each other. But for this build, I'm not going for a freezer tube kind of diorama. I've got a crashed planet, door is open kind of situation in mind for my setup here. So the chairs are set, the freezer tubes are set. Let me repackage those and we'll pull out the next couple things I need to test. And then we'll get to the walls. And here's a look at these guys, all test fit and happy. Next up, I've got the 3 or so Jacob's ladder tubes. And as I mentioned in a previous video, at some point the Jacob's ladder thing is going to be getting a very special treatment with the side fire fiber optics, which means I've got to figure out how all that's going to go. I should be able to just drop that in almost last, so there's no hurry. My basic idea is that there's going to be a 3mm LED sitting on top here going straight into the floor. Above that will be housed some brass tubes. Directly above the LED will be the side fire, which goes into the ceiling. Easy enough. For the freezer tube, I've already got some brass cuts. I've got to glue those back down. They used to be there. Each one of those will get a single RGB flasher. And I think that is it for all the little bits. Let's do the stairway last, and then we'll test the floor out. And needless to say, the stairway fits perfectly. I think I can drop this piece in now. Let that dry for a few seconds, cut it out, and drop it in place. And on to all pieces. If it doesn't fit, I'm cutting the back side of the joint in hopes that there's some blood. Nope, lucky me. So in this case, the wall doesn't quite fit, so I'm shaving away the back side of the tabs, or the slots rather, for the tabs, to minimize any damage to the front of the paint. So that's a really good fit there. One thing I'm doing on all of these is sanding down the fronts and kind of gouging them a little as well. Scribing, that is. And the idea here is that by doing this, when I sand down, I'll be protecting the line itself. Don't want to go too deep with these, basically just give the idea for the plastic. And then so from here, it's just a matter of painting that dark brown of the floor. And theoretically, when this gets slotted in, those tabs will be a little further back and darker. So it should look like this is an actual set piece resting on the floor, as it should, as opposed to looking like a tiny little model that looks like it's barely stuck together. So that has to happen for each of the wall pieces. And each of these floor pieces is also going to need to be very carefully gouged out just a little. My previous experience tells me that this is actually a dangerous situation if the blade slips, or worse, if the paint cracks. You've got an ugly situation on your hand. And at this point, we don't want any bad things happening, do we? So here's what I'm talking about with paint damage and chipping up. That could have easily happened on the front side. I'm lucky it happened on the back. There's a little bit over here on this one. So that's what happens when the pieces are too tight. Definitely don't want that happening. So this is an example where I already trimmed the tabs down and painted them brown. It looks pretty good. This is definitely going to have a time getting itself glued down. The back of the floors clearly wants to pull away. Don't know what I'll be able to do about that, because this front will have to be absolutely locked down. Alright, so you know what? It looks like this is going to work. I can leave this loose for a while. First goal is getting this first corner here glued in. When I do it, making sure that's all nice. Let's see, it should be right about there. So make sure this corner is fully fastened down, then be gluing this guy in, and at that point I'll do the putty fill in there and on the sides. And I also have to find a way to clamp the floor as much to this wall as possible. And of course, before that happens, the fake wall has to go back in here. Have to test out the outer hull window, porthole, whatever you want to call it. I did make these two scuffs right here when I was trying to get that into place. They should be out of sight just inside this partition, which is a lucky one for me.